I am 73 years old. Last April, we had a heavy spring rainstorm roll through Knoxville on a Tuesday morning, right on the day the city picks up the trash. I walked out to the side of the garage, grabbed the thick plastic handle of our heavy green municipal bin, and started dragging it down the steep incline of our driveway. The asphalt was slick with rain. About halfway down, the plastic wheels caught hard on a piece of broken branch. I yanked the handle aggressively to pull it over the obstacle, leaning my body weight backward. My boot slipped an inch, but instead of catching my balance, the muscles in my upper thighs completely surrendered. There was absolutely no tension, no resistance, no power to hold me up. I collapsed backward onto the wet asphalt, the heavy plastic bin tipping over and spilling right next to me. I sat there in the cold rain, water soaking through my jeans, looking down at my own legs in absolute disbelief. I did not fall because it was slippery. I fell because my legs no longer possessed the raw strength to catch my own weight. I spent 3 decades working on the concrete floors of a regional distribution center. I unloaded heavy freight, I climbed steel ladders to check inventory, and I spent 12 hours a day moving my body like it was a piece of heavy machinery. When you live that kind of physical life, you build a quiet arrogance about your own strength. You assume your legs are made of iron and that the iron will never rust. When I retired, I naturally sat down more often. I rested. I thought I had earned the right to take it easy. Sitting in that freezing rain, rubbing my bruised hip, I realized I had not earned anything. I was just letting the machinery quietly rust away. My legs had become incredibly hollow, and I was dangerously close to losing the ability to navigate my own property. My daughter Megan came over the following Sunday for dinner. She is an occupational therapist. She spends her entire professional life watching older men and women slowly lose their freedom because their bodies can no longer perform the simplest physical tasks. I made the mistake of telling her about my fall in the driveway, trying to pass it off as a clumsy slip in the rain. She did not smile. She put her coffee cup down and told me about a medical paper she had been reading at her clinic. The paper tracked men in their late 60s and 70s, and the data was terrifying. It showed that an aging man can lose up to 8% of his functional muscle mass every single decade if he does not aggressively fight to keep it. She told me that over 60% of men my age are suffering from severe muscle wasting right now, but they blame their weakness on their joints or just getting older. They do not realize they are literally starving the muscle right off their own skeletons, and the damage usually starts the exact second they wake up in the morning. I spent the next month treating my own body like a diagnostic project in my garage. I looked at every single habit I had, trying to figure out where the strength was leaking out. I realized that my morning routine, the exact things I did in the first 2 hours after getting out of bed, was actively destroying the muscle in my legs. I narrowed the problem down to 4 specific things. 3 of them were massive mistakes I was making every single morning because I believed the health advice marketed to older folks. The 4th thing was one incredibly simple, completely tasteless powder I finally started stirring into my morning coffee that stopped the muscle loss cold and put the heavy armor back on my legs. I am going to tell you exactly what all 4 of these things are. We have to talk about the mistakes first, because you cannot fix a broken foundation if you keep pounding the wrong nails into it. The first mistake I had to completely abandon was waiting until late morning to eat while drinking black coffee. For the last several years, I would wake up at 6 in the morning, pour a massive mug of black coffee, and sit on the back porch until 10 or 11 o'clock before I ate anything. I read somewhere that intermittent fasting was good for your heart and kept your waistline trim. I thought I was being disciplined. I thought I was keeping my old body lean. What I was actually doing was sending my system into a severe catabolic panic. When you wake up, your body has been running on empty all night long. If you are 73 years old and you dump caffeine into an empty stomach, your body still desperately needs fuel to operate. Because you refuse to feed it, the body releases a flood of stress hormones and goes looking for emergency energy. The easiest place for it to find that energy is inside your own muscle tissue. I was literally forcing my body to cannibalize the muscle in my own thighs just to keep me awake on the porch. Megan showed me a clinical study that looked at older adults who fasted on black coffee versus those who consumed dense protein immediately after waking up. The fasting group lost their lean muscle mass at an incredibly accelerated rate. Their bodies were constantly tearing down their own tissue for fuel. It made me think of a guy from my old neighborhood named Frank. Frank was 75 and obsessed with keeping his weight down. He drank black coffee until noon every single day. Last summer, I watched him try to walk up the small grassy hill in the local park. His legs were shaking so badly he had to stop halfway up and lean on a tree. He had no drive left in his lower body. His fasting had kept him thin, but it had eaten his leg muscles down to the bone. I stopped starving myself in the morning that exact same day. The second mistake was grabbing a piece of dry toast or a bagel when I finally decided to eat. When I did get hungry, I wanted something easy. I would toast a piece of bread, spread a little fruit jam on it, and eat it with my second cup of coffee. I thought it was a harmless light breakfast. I thought it was easy on the digestion. I was dead wrong. An older body is incredibly stubborn when it comes to holding on to muscle. It requires a heavy, immediate supply of amino acids to repair the wear and tear from the day before. When you eat a piece of toast, you are flooding your older bloodstream with pure carbohydrates. That causes a massive spike in insulin, which completely shuts down your body's ability to repair tissue. You'll get a quick rush of energy, but you are giving your muscles absolutely zero building blocks. You are basically trying to build a brick wall out of paper. I found a research trial that compared older men consuming carbohydrate-heavy breakfasts versus dense protein meals. The men eating the carbohydrates continued to lose strength in their legs month after month. Their muscles did not receive the chemical signal required to rebuild. I realized I was eating food, but the construction site inside my body remained completely shut down. My brother-in-law Gary fell into this exact trap. He started eating nothing but an oatmeal muffin and a cup of tea every morning because his doctor told him to watch his cholesterol. Last winter, he lost his balance trying to get out of the bathtub. His legs simply gave out because the muscle had vanished. He ended up fracturing his wrist trying to catch himself. His light breakfast cost him his mobility. I threw all the bagels and bread out of my pantry the next morning. The third mistake was trusting the most popular health supplement on the market. Linda started buying tubs of collagen powder because she saw it advertised on every morning television show. The advertisements promised it was the ultimate anti-aging miracle. It dissolved in coffee, it had no taste, and they said it was pure protein. I started putting a scoop of it in my mug every morning, thinking I was finally giving my muscles the medicine they needed to rebuild. I was actually wasting my time and quietly starving my legs. What nobody tells you about that expensive collagen powder is that it is an incomplete protein. It is entirely missing an essential amino acid called tryptophan, and more importantly, it has incredibly low levels of leucine. Leucine is the specific spark plug required to turn on the engine of muscle growth in an aging body. Collagen is fine for your fingernails, and it might help your skin, but it is virtually useless for stopping severe muscle loss. I was putting a powder in my coffee that my muscles could not even use. I read a paper from a sports science university that tracked men over 65 who relied on collagen supplements for muscle retention versus those who took complete proteins. The men taking the collagen saw absolutely zero improvement in their functional leg strength. They were drinking their expensive powder while their muscles continued to shrink. A friend of mine from the hardware store, a retired carpenter named Thomas, made this mistake. He took 2 scoops of collagen every day for 3 years. He still ended up needing a walker to get around his own house because the muscle in his calves and thighs completely wasted away. The powder protected his joints, but it let his legs vanish. I took that tub of collagen and pushed it to the absolute back of the highest cabinet in the kitchen. Taking away the fasting, the empty carbohydrates, and the useless collagen stopped the aggressive damage. I had stopped poisoning the environment, but my legs still felt incredibly hollow and weak. I still did not trust my own balance on the driveway. I needed to figure out what my body was actually begging for the second I woke up. I needed a specific, powerful material that could rebuild the foundation without forcing me to cook a massive meal at 6 in the morning. That is when I found the fourth thing on this list, the single tasteless powder that changed everything for me. I started adding one heavy scoop of high-quality, unflavored whey protein isolate directly into my morning coffee. I did not buy the cheap stuff filled with artificial chocolate or vanilla flavorings. I found a pure, cold-processed, unflavored whey isolate. I would let my coffee cool for just a minute so the heat would not clump the powder, stir it in, and it would completely disappear. It added a slight creaminess to the coffee, but it had absolutely zero taste. I realized that my older body needed an aggressive, immediate dose of complete amino acids to force the muscles to stop shrinking and start growing again. An unflavored whey isolate is the most efficient delivery system on Earth. Whey protein isolate is packed with the highest naturally occurring concentration of leucine available. When I drank that coffee, that massive dose of leucine hit my bloodstream immediately. It acted like a master switch. It flipped my body out of the catabolic, muscle-destroying state of the morning and forced it into an aggressive muscle-building state. Without that massive dose of leucine, an older body simply refuses to build muscle. But by delivering it in liquid form the second I woke up, I was forcing my stubborn, aging muscles to respond exactly the way a younger man's muscles would. I read a staggering study that looked specifically at older men consuming unflavored whey isolate in the morning versus those eating standard breakfasts. The results were undeniable. The men drinking the whey isolate completely stopped their muscle wasting. Their bodies grabbed that dense, complete amino acid profile and aggressively repaired the muscle fibers in their legs. They were feeding their bodies the exact raw materials needed to pour fresh concrete and reinforce the foundation. I was absolutely floored. I had been drinking empty coffee and eating useless toast for years when I could have been giving my legs the exact biological key they needed to survive. I did not wait around. The very next morning, I stirred that unflavored powder into my mug. I sat on the porch and drank it. I did it the next day and the day after that. It required zero extra effort. It did not change the taste of my morning coffee, but it completely changed the chemical environment inside my body. The change was not magic. You do not rebuild a decade of lost muscle in a single week. But about 2 months after I threw away the bagels and started adding that unflavored whey isolate to my coffee every morning, I was out in the side yard. Linda had asked me to move 4 heavy bags of wet topsoil from the back of the garage to the garden beds. I walked over to the first bag, bent my knees, got my hands under the thick plastic, and stood up. I did not have to brace my back. I did not have to rock back and forth to gain momentum. My thighs simply fired. The muscle tightened like a heavy steel cable, and I lifted the 50-pound bag of wet dirt without a single tremble in my legs. I stood there in the grass holding that heavy bag against my chest, feeling the solid, unforgiving ground under my boots, and I realized the weakness was completely gone. The hollow feeling in my thighs had vanished. The heavy armor was holding. When you get to be my age, the things that matter are incredibly simple. If your legs go, your freedom goes right out the door with them. You become a prisoner in your own house. Muscle does not just vanish because the calendar turns over. It goes when you stop giving it a reason to stay, and it goes when you starve it of the complete, heavy building blocks it needs to survive. You do not have to watch your world shrink. You do not have to accept that dragging a trash can or lifting a bag of dirt is going to be a terrifying, dangerous experience for the rest of your life. You just have to be willing to look at what you are drinking in the morning and have the courage to put the right fuel in the engine. I'm going to head out to the garage now. Derek is bringing his truck over, and we have to pull a heavy alternator out of an old engine block he is rebuilding. My legs are going to carry my weight, and they are going to hold me steady while I lean over that engine. Take care of your body, feed it the heavy materials it actually needs, and do not let anyone tell you that weakness is just an inevitable part of the deal. I will be right here if you want to talk again.